Good day, everyone. It's Krause of JAKIB Media. Why am I wearing a Carson Wentz NFC East Pro Bowl jersey? Well, it's the only jersey I will not be able to give away this season, but we will be giving away 10 Devonta Smith jerseys at our 2021 NFL schedule release special broadcast, all presented by Pure Bull. The broadcast will be Wednesday night, 8 p.m. to midnight. You must be subscribed. You must be present to win, and we'll give away 10 Devonta Smith jerseys. Also, as we get closer to the season, tickets for every single game on the schedule, both home and away, plus our bus trip and experiences for fans that you will never find anywhere else. All part of the JAKIB Media Network. See you next time, everybody.
Right, in Birds 365 with Michael Mackay, John McMullen, Jody McDonald. Lucky enough to have as our guest for the next 15, 20. Shoot, maybe we'll keep it 25 minutes if he's got that for us. Does a great job covering the Birds day in and day out for NJ.com. Michael Kaye jumps aboard with us. Mike, we haven't had you on since the draft. Eagles surprise you with anything they did? Was there anything that you did not see coming? Because we all know guys like yourself and John follow it day in and day out, get the information, love to speculate and the like, and then the draft actually happens. Every once in a while, it goes strictly to foil, and then every once in a while, you're going, wow, didn't see that coming. Anything the Eagles do surprise you?
Well, the last time I was on your show, I said that they're going to go defense and probably cornerback in the first round. Then they didn't go cornerback until the fourth round. The truth is they really wanted Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn. They just went early, and Carolina and Denver did not want to move out of their picks. This was a draft where they had four guys that they thought they could land. And when that fourth guy was still on the board with, the Giants breathing down their neck, they made a move up and dealt with the devil and traded with the Cowboys and got their guy. And I think when we look at this draft in a vacuum, you say, well, you gave up a very high valued asset after you traded back to get a high valued asset. What does that say about your prioritization of assets? And really, I think what the Eagles did was they wanted to nail this first pick because they needed to nail it, as opposed to settling for Rashawn Slater or settling for somebody like Kwity Paye, who went, 10 spots later or 11 spots later. So they wanted to nail this pick. They wanted to get one of those four guys. Jalen Waddle came off the board, as I predicted, to the Dolphins at 6. Then J.C. Horn, which I did not predict, went off the board at 8 to Carolina. Denver took a cornerback, which we had speculated on, in Patrick Surtain. And then when you get to 10 and that fourth guy's there, you have to make that move. And Howie Roseman came out on, I believe it was Saturday, and said that the Eagles really wanted to get Zach McPherson late in the third round. Well, guess what? They probably would have used the 84th overall pick on Zach McPherson. Instead, they get him 50 picks, after their actual third round pick and select him in the fourth round. So they got lucky there. So overall, I think they stuck to their board, and maybe that was the most surprising thing of all.
Well, Mike, number one, you're telling me the Eagles didn't get the player they wanted, because I was assured that Devonta Smith was always the guy. But you're right. It was corner first, then receiver. You did a great job at NJOnline.com, your Devonta Smith piece. You went in deep. You talked to some of his trainers, his track coach, how an awkward teenager turned into the Slim Reaper. What did you learn about Devonta Smith? Why is he such a home run for this particular team?
He's the T-700. He's the new version of the Terminator. This guy is cold as ice, and he's focused. I mean, he's a guy who constantly wants to get better. This is a guy who caught the game-winning touchdown pass in the national championship game as a true freshman, and 2 hours later just wanted to talk about how he missed a block. Like, that's crazy. He's got a trainer who's worked with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, Mark Ingram, and he constantly is on these guys to perfect their routes. Well, Devonta Smith will run a perfect route and still stop in the middle of it and want to run it again. he's a guy who's like obsessed with perfection. And while some people would think that's unhealthy, I know another guy who was obsessed with perfection in Michael Jordan, not saying they're the same guy or whatever, but having that killer instinct sometimes makes you better and makes up for some of your shortcomings. And when we say shortcomings, we're talking about obviously his slender build, which he's had his entire life. He was an awkward kid growing up in middle school, had big hands, big feet, long arms, but like a really small body and just couldn't keep on weight. He was 150 pounds when he got to Alabama. And so he had to learn how to be a technician. And then he hit a growth spurt, his speed increased. And oh, by the way, he's a master technician. So he put everything together, and that's how he's become this wide receiver who weighs 166 pounds, yet can play the X receiver position.
And one of the things that I thought, and I read your article as well, Michael, and it was good, as Johnny noted, that I think hits home with Eagle fans, because we talked to him. I do it on the radio. John does it as well. There are a whole bunch of Eagle fans that wanted no part of Devonta Smith before the draft. There's no such thing as a 166-pound receiver in the National Football League. Eagles take him and go, yeah, but, and the fans turn their opinions around because now he's an Eagle and I have to root for him. I'm going to emphasize the positive. More power to you if that's the case. But there are some that cling to the, I don't need a 166-pound receiver. We'll get used to it because that's what he's going to play at in the NFL. As you noted, he knows it would be better to be bigger, but he just wasn't capable of putting on that extra weight, that extra muscle. His physique is his physique. If they don't have the ability to get you bigger at Alabama, they're not going to be able to do it here in Philadelphia either. So the chances are this is going to be the size player that the Eagles have. They couldn't knock him to pieces in the SEC. Why should we be afraid that that's going to happen in the NFL?
Yeah, and I think what he gives you is a guy who can move around, and you were able to be a little bit more creative with him. We talk about his weight being at 166. He's now going to have like a true strength and conditioning program here, where it's professional and you've got to kind of learn. But the thing that's underrated about him is his strength. If you watch him on film, this dude is pretty tough. He gets bashed all the time for being slender. A lot of people had a problem with him being called the Slim Reaper because I guess that's what Kevin Durant's called. Well, we can call him the Svelte Assassin if you want, because this dude's out there. I have in my note, before I got into beat writing, John knows this, I was a draft analyst, and I did film work on Devonta Smith before this draft. And in my notes, it says, like just in the middle of my notes says, Devonta Smith doesn't give an F if you're bigger than him. And that's the mindset he has, and that's how he plays. He's Philly tough. We've constantly talked about these guys that they brought in here who just can't handle playing in Philly. Playing in Philly is tough. Yeah. And, I mean, you guys know that. You guys have seen guys come and go. Devonta Smith isn't worried about social media. He might be plugging in out there with his video games and dreams and nightmares, but he doesn't care. He and Jalen Hurts are one and the same, and I think this shows you the type of roster that this team is trying to build, especially when you add in Landon Dickerson, who I know you're going to ask me about. Yeah. So the mentality of this team is different.
Now, Mike, I'm glad you brought that up before I get to Landon Dickerson. And everybody, again, go to mjonline.com, read Mike's piece on Devonta Smith. You get a real in-depth look on how he became the player he was at Alabama. You just said something that concerns me, and I agree with. He is a tough kid. He does not play. I've said this all the time. He does not play like he's 166 pounds. He plays like he's 200 pounds. He's a yards after catch guy, but he is 166 pounds. And we always go back to that Zach Ertz quote. I say it a lot. The injury rate in this league is 100%. Well, if you're 166 pounds and you want to stick your nose into the you-know-what, and you're not afraid of it, that scares me a little bit, to be honest.
And I think that is something that they're going to have to kind of pull back on. I mean, you don't want to let a wild stallion not go out there and buck, but like they've got to come up with a theory and a way of using him that kind of protects him from himself, which is something they couldn't do with Carson Wentz under the previous regime, right? So They're very aware of this. I think that while they keep billing him as a guy who can play X, he's mostly going to play the Z spot. He's going to have some space. He's going to have some cushion. I think Jalen Reagor is going to be moved to the slot more frequently. You'll see Travis Fulgham. You'll see whomever play the X a little bit more, especially in 11 personnel looks. But look, they've got to protect from himself. He's got to be smart here. And that could mean you don't have him run a lot of crossing routes. It could mean that you kind of scheme him up so that he's in space more even at the X position. But what I will say is they're going to get him to gain weight. Like, these are professionals now. I mean, Tim Rath's that's his job. That should be his number one job. He should be packing on muscle and packing on strength. And he's got a frame that's slender and tall, so you can put some muscle on that frame, and he should still be able to be as effective. Because as fast as he is, that's not really his trademark. His trademark's technique. So you can kind of fill out that frame, but I do understand that concern.
All right, one more Devonta Smith question for you, and you led us to it, so I don't have a problem asking it, even though we don't know the answer. I'm asking you to speculate. If Devonta Smith has got to refine his game, and he's got to take slightly less chances, as you and John just discussed, why would you put yourself at risk? He might have to adjust his mindset a little bit. Who's going to be the guy to get him to do that? We don't know because it's a whole new coaching staff. We've never seen them in action with their responsibilities and the like. It could be the head coach, Nick Sirianni, because he loves the ball and he loves to talk about wide receivers because that's what he cut his teeth on. Or it could be their offensive coordinator. Or it could be their receivers coach. They don't really have a veteran guy on this team. We talk about mentorship all the time and a guy who could, hey, listen, kid, I've been there. I've done that. Let me explain. They don't have that guy. So it looks like it's going to have to come from the coaching staff. Who's the number one guy to potentially change his game?
Well, to me, I think it's actually Kevin Patullo, their passing game coordinator, who is a former quarterbacks coach, worked with wide receivers. But my understanding in talking to people in Indianapolis is his main job was teaching wide receivers how to read defenses. That was like his big job. So his understanding of the defense can help Devonta Smith understand where he's at on the field at all times, give him a better understanding and an awareness of the field. And I think that's really important. I think that's why Kevin Patullo is so important to this concoction of former wide receivers and former quarterbacks coaches that they have. I think Aaron Moorhead's a guy who can say, look, I've been there. I've been surrounded by a guy who was pretty comparable to your size and strength in Marvin Harrison. I played with the guy. I watched how this guy worked, and he can show him film of how he was able to maintain his physique and skill set throughout a Hall of Fame career. And Devonta Smith, if anything, is a creature of habit and a creature of study. And he's a guy who's going to take the time to learn and take in that advice.
All right, Mike, let's shift to Landon Dickerson, that second-round pick. Obviously, there's tremendous upside. That's a first-round talent. I don't think anybody questions that. But that injury history is real. It's lengthy. 2 torn ACLs, a tightrope surgery we just went through with Lane Johnson. He wasn't able to get through a season after undergoing that procedure. Another serious ankle injury. What did you think of the pick? What when you mix all that in, where did you land?
I mean, I gave it a C because it's so boom or bust that you have to kind of wait to see what happens there. I mean, when you watch the film, this dude is nasty. He is nasty. He is a Philly offensive lineman if I ever saw one.
He reminds me of Ryan Jensen. Is that who you see, Ryan Jensen?
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, without having watched him in a while, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, he's got like a dog to him. He plays like a right tackle at center, which is crazy to me. Howie Roseman recently said that he reminds him of John Runyon. Yeah. But the guy's also like a really quirky dude. He's doing backflips at pro days. He's, putting a railroad tie on his truck as a bumper. Like this dude's zany. He's got kind of like an Evan Mathis, Lane Johnson like personality. And I think when you look at what he can bring, not just to the field, but people talk about the locker room and leadership, it's also about setting a tone in a locker room. And I think when a young guy can set a tone, that pushes everybody, especially the older guys who are like, wait, we got to keep our jobs here. They're about to replace a guy in Jason Kelsey who is the ultimate professional, the ultimate respect factor in that locker room. What better way to do that than with a guy who created his own DIY gym at Alabama during COVID and literally bonded the entire team together. This is a special person. He's not just a special player, and that's something the Eagles really emphasize. And look, I know that's all PR. I know that's public relations, and that's like, hey, we're trying to hedge our bets because, they know what type of risk this is. But if it pays off, this is going to be like they got a top 15 player at 40. It's different than Sidney Jones. Offensive linemen deal with ACL injuries and can recover pretty quickly. The tightrope surgery was years ago, and it didn't really affect him. He was the best center in the country last year. It wasn't even close. Yeah. So I think they feel confident that he can recover. I mean, like I said, he was doing cartwheels at a pro day like 3 months later. He's a guy who got to take the final snap in the national championship game a month after tearing his knee apart. Like, this is a different type of cat. And I think there are reports out there that he'll be ready for training camp. That's wild, right? So different type of dude. And that's the type of dude you kind of want to bet on, as the Eagles say.
Mike, I bring this up basically every day here on Birds 365, and with a guest like you, when you come on, job to cover the team day in and day out. Check another day off the calendar. Zach Ertz is still here, even though we've had several reports that it's imminent. It's a matter of days. It's a matter of weeks, matter of hours before Zach Ertz is no longer a Philadelphia Eagle. Yet he is. And Howie Roseman spoke about him last week and kind of sung his praises to at least verbally lay the groundwork of the possibility of Zach Ertz staying. Is there any possibility? It seems like there's some pretty bad water that's flowed under this bridge and that it just doesn't seem capable of being worked out. Yet he's still here. What do we read into Zach Ertz?
I think they're saying all the right things because that's what they have to do. You can't be in a situation where Zach Ertz magically says, you know what, I'll play on my contract, and then you've just bashed him to the public. I said this during the Carson Wentz saga. You have to take an asset and sell him to the public both ways, right? You have to give the impression that you're willing to keep him so you have leverage, while also shining up his shoes to potential buyers. And look, the Eagles, once they got past the first round, I knew he wasn't being traded. There were people that were guaranteeing that he was going to get traded, and I'm not trying to take a knock on any of our colleagues, but that wasn't the case. And so when that happens, now you got to look at June 1, because that's the big day, June 2nd, really.
Yeah.
Because they can go from saving $4.9 million to $8.5 million just by releasing him or trading him for a travel thermos. So, that's where you want to be. I know it's not the greatest thing for Zach Ertz, but really at this point, waiting a month doesn't really matter. Actually, it might be better for him because he knows what his competition is going to be. He doesn't have to worry about a draft pick being spent on a guy. And really, when you look at it, after Kyle Pitts came off the board, Zach Ertz was the most appealing available option on the market. Maybe Hayden Hurst is out there too. But to me, now it's patience time. Just wait out that month, because that's when, if he's not cut by June 2nd, then you kind of go, well, maybe they're going to Sam Bradford him and wait for an injury to happen in training camp. But yeah, every day that he's here, the likelihood that he stays increases. But even then, John will tell you it's like a 2% chance. Yeah. I think he wants a change of scenery pretty bad. I don't think he's a guy who's extremely disgruntled. I just think he wants a clean break. It's time. And I think the Eagles understand that they have $5 million right now under the cap. They need more of that to sign their free agent class. So their options are restructure Fletcher Cox's contract, which has already got a mammoth cap hit, or trade Zach Ertz or release Zach Ertz. That's really their option. So that's why I would say there's little to no chance.
How about the restructure Lane Johnson? Because I remember you wrote about it, John wrote about it, everybody wrote about it. Everyone expected Lane Johnson to get restructured, and they never did. That is another way to move cap money around. Is that still a possibility? Like you say, if Zach Ertz isn't going to be released to create that needed cap availability?
When you ask a girl to the dance and she says no, sometimes it's kind of hard to ask that person again to go to the dance with you. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where Lane Johnson was open to being restructured. The Eagles just decided they didn't need it. Maybe that changes, but like you've had that conversation. If I'm Lane Johnson, I'm like, what's going on here? So, it's a possibility, but I don't see it happening.
As long as he gets his money. It depends on what the restructure looks like. But
well, the thing is, too, is I don't know if it makes a ton of sense coming off that injury. But then again, they just restructured Brandon Brooks, who's had more injuries over the last 3 years than James Bond has had, movies. It's tough. You've got to figure out how comfortable you are with a guy rehabbing. And Lane Johnson's going to enter, I think he's 29 now. Like, he's getting up there.
And he said,
he's older than 29, but he's getting up there.
Yeah. You mentioned June 2nd. If they add a tumbler with that travel thermos, I think you could get the deal done. So that is a very good potential deal, Mike Kaye. But I want to talk to you about day 3. You wrote about Kenneth Gainwell. That was a good piece as well. I think he's a perfect fit for this team because what did Miles Sanders do poorly last year? Catch the football, pass protection. You get a natural third down receiving back. You have the history with Nick Sirianni using pass catchers, even more so if you go back to Jamel Singleton, the way he used running backs. I think it's a nice fit. And then you also mentioned Zach McPherson. Look, man, this team doesn't have cornerbacks. They didn't address this position. 4th round pick, Mike Kaye. Who's going to play outside corner for this team?
Right now, it's Zach McPherson, because if you look at the rest of the crew, it's like a bunch of
James.
Yeah, it's a bunch of guys that you've never heard of or are upset that you remember. You know what I mean? It's not a list of who's who. But what I will say is this. Steven Nelson's still out there in free agency.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of wonder if Steven Nelson's waiting to kind of read the tea leaves. And if you look at the cornerback group, if Steven Nelson's deciding between a $4 million contract and a $3 million contract, if he wants to up his value, he's literally going to be handed the number 2 job here, playing opposite Darius Slay, and he gets to play mostly in zone. That's perfect for his ball skills. So to me, I think there's a move to be made there. Howie Roseman even addressed it, which is something he doesn't typically do. And then you look at Kenneth Gainwell. So I've been comparing him since I watched film on him this offseason to Naheem Hines, who Nick Sirianni has used to perfection over the last 3 years. He caught 63 passes last year. I think he caught 44 the year before, 63 the year before. That's 170 passes in 3 years. That's wild. That's when you have a running back whose main designation is the receiving game. And I think while we've seen Boston Scott and Miles Sanders show their upside as receivers, you want to give your guys different roles. And that's what Sirianni kind of really likes to do. So does Shane Steichen, by the way, their offensive coordinator. He used Austin Eckler, who had the 3rd most catches on the team with the Chargers his lone year as the offensive coordinator. Oh, and by the way, Eckler missed 6 games. He caught 54 passes. That's wild. But again, it seems like everybody on this team wants their running backs to have roles and not just be, thrown in willy-nilly, kind of the way it worked with the previous regime. So, Miles Sanders will be that main back. Boston Scott will be his change of pace back when needed. And then really you're looking at Kenneth Gainwell to be that 3rd down bailout, yards after catch weapon. And I think that's going to help Jalen Hurts out a lot. He can trust he only threw, I believe, 13 passes to running backs in his 3 full games that he started and finished this year. That's 13%, excuse me. 13% of his targets were to running backs. Brain math.
It happens.
But I think you'll see Jalen Hurts has a little bit more juice on third down now with the arrival of Devonta Smith, and then with Gainwell. I think Gainwell was their best pick. I gave it an A+. I think I can't think of a more brilliant fit on day 3 than this guy, and I think he's going to be a special-esque player. I think he's a guy who's going to bring a lot of juice.
Fair enough. All right, I'm going to ask you, keep that hat on, the Michael Kaye draft scout analyst hat. And I understand the question. It can't be perfectly answered because 2 of the 4 teams I'm going to ask you to rank and rate for me, part of their draft was acquiring future assets, picks in future years. Cowboys traded down with the Eagles, but they cashed the chip right away. The Washington football team took the picks they had. But the Giants and Eagles both made a major move that scored them future assets. So factor that in as you see fit. How do you rate the 4 teams in the NFC East out of what they got most out of this draft, 1 through 4?
Well, it's interesting because you talk about immediate value, and the Cowboys clearly got that. But when you look at the long-term upside of the class, I think the Giants and the Eagles blew everybody else away. I thought the Redskins had a really good draft. I'd actually give them all Bs, if that makes sense, but for different reasons. I think the Cowboys really didn't care about character, and that is...
They never do.
Yeah, nothing new there.
I mean, this was... if you go down that list and you go down through their character issues, woo, boy. And to me, that's a bigger gamble than injuries. So I'm going to probably rank them 4th. I'll give Washington 3rd. And then I'll say the Giants 2nd because, well, actually, I'm going to put the Giants at the top because I think they got so much value in the moment, the cost benefit. I mean, I didn't really like the Kadarius Toney pick. I don't really get it.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like it either.
But I think when you look at how bad Chicago's going to be this year, because they only have a defense and a high upside.
Be careful. You badmouth Justin Fields at your own risk, Kay.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, don't write those Bears off.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think in a vacuum, I think that the Bears pick's going to be better than the Dolphins pick. Not much better, but I do think it'll be better. I don't love that the Eagles traded a 3rd-round pick to move up, but I get it. And I think, look, I was on the show last week and said 2022 draft picks, that's the gold mine. And so for me to not say that the Cowboys or the Giants and the Eagles came out on top would be, hypocritical. So I'm going to go with those 2 at the top. It's hard for me to place which one. Whatever. Let's put the Eagles there. I like not getting hate emails. But yeah, to me,
who cares?
I think the Giants and the Eagles understand that they're not Super Bowl contenders, so they attack the draft accordingly. Washington is the reigning division champ, and they spent their picks as they saw fit, and I think they're going to be good this year. The Cowboys, character issues always bother me, so you're never gonna. That's why I didn't think Michael Parsons was going to be here.
Well, there's other reasons, but yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but I just didn't see it. Kelvin Joseph, I believe Josh Ball has some baggage as well. So yeah, I think the Eagles and the Giants were the guys that came out long-term on top. And I think something we have to look at, we've seen what's happened to the Eagles when you try to put everything in the basket for 1 year, it's not sustainable. So I think when you look at the way the Eagles changed up their strategy and went with long-term thinking, that's a win in itself.
Hey, real quick, Mike, on the Giants, and then I'm going to give Jody Mack a surprise about Mike Kaye that he'll enjoy. But I'd like the Giants. If you give me Ojulari at 20 and you give me Toney at 50, I like it.
Yeah.
So, but you know how pedigree works in this league, and Toney will always be a first-round pick, and I think he'll be a disappointment. Now, real quick, I want to ship. Guess what Mike Kaye likes, Jody McDonald? Yes, he's a pro wrestling fan.
Yeah.
And
surprise, but yeah, I mean, I like wrestling too.
Yeah. Well, Jody didn't know. Not a surprise to us, but
I did not.
Mike also worked in Jacksonville, so he worked with Tony Khan, who runs AEW Wrestling. I do want to ship this to football. People get mad. I like to talk about wrestling.
Oh, I want to get back to AEW. Wait. I just watched on demand the show
product.
last night. The blood and guts match. Man, that was good. Have you had a chance to see that yet?
It was awful.
It was awful. What are you talking about? There was blood everywhere.
It was
You don't like MJF standing on top of the cage? Having pushed him off? Oh, that was great.
Tony Khan will not respond to my messages anymore because I criticize his wrestling program.
Well, there, it's like
not me. I love the show.
I'm appropriately placed in the middle of you two guys for this discussion because that's kind of where I'm at. I think we talk about booking. The whole point of this match was to elevate MJF. That happened, right? Don't love the finish. Don't think it made the. I always talk about this with my friends. When we're talking wrestling, and John and I have talked about this too. Making a face or a good guy look stupid is like a cardinal sin, and that's exactly what they did. Giving up that match, not thinking that MJF is just going to push him off anyway into like a pile of padding and
that wasn't great. And they had said during the concrete stage. Concrete. What are you talking about? Concrete. Yeah. That was my one knock on it.
My biggest thing is Tony should know better. You can't put blood on television in today's environment and get advertisers and get sponsors. It's a bigger thing for me, but also there's so many missed spots. Yes, it's spectacular, but these guys are risking life and limb for these stupid spots. It doesn't mean anything. He's got a Freebird slam of the cage in the same match as a Mick Foley bump off the top. Why are you using all this at once? That is my criticism.
Well, okay, so here's what I'll say. Here's the biggest indictment of this. Not only do the faces come off stupid, I don't care about anyone else in this match but MJF. I don't. Or Jericho.
Yeah. Well, why would you?
What did this do to everybody else? You have a group match only to exclude the group from like any real importance. Like, frankly, if somebody's going to take that bump, it should have been Sammy Guevara because you're going to push him to be the biggest face.
I was going to say, don't you think he elevated what he did in the early stages of the match?
And then it got bad. It got bad later.
Yeah, he got bad thereafter. Yeah. I remembered the first 10 minutes of the match.
Well, I thought he came off great. John and I were texting. I was like, Sammy Guevara's going to be a huge star.
Yeah.
For 40 minutes, I forgot he existed.
Tremendous talent. But also, there's a reason DX is DX, NWO is NWO, Freebirds are the Freebirds. They were unique. I don't need 75 groups that I can't keep together.
Yeah, I think that's an issue. Yes. I mean, look, you see it happening, and it's not solely to them. You look at it in NXT. There's a reason why Vince doesn't like factions, because once you have more than two, you're evening the playing field. Factions should be used, in my opinion, nowadays to get over smaller talent. Like, you look at the best faction right now is was the Undisputed Era, because those are four small guys who would not make it on the main roster or who would stand out as small guys anywhere else. And the four of them turned into badasses, right? So like you look at it, I think the last takeover, like 6 main guys were announced as 205 or under. Well, guess what? There's a whole show called 205 Live where it's just cruiserweights that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
The difference is, 4 guys came together and elevated. The difference is Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano found magic in a bottle. Like, that's the type of stuff we're talking about. I don't think Jericho's elevated any of these guys but Guevara. Like, Jake Hager, I don't care about. No. I think I actually think the factions held what's their faces? Pride and Prejudice or whatever.
I can't give you straight anyway. That's the point.
I mean, I think
if I don't know
what have they accomplished.
That's a problem. All right, Mike, real quick, give me a minute on Tony Khan as a football executive so I can get out of this and not get in trouble for talking pro wrestling.
Sure. So interesting with the Tebow stuff, right? Let's talk about that real quick. And we'll get out of here. So, look, I get it. You want all the publicity possible during the draft, but okay, so you've worked out Tim Tebow. You're thinking about wanting to add him. Tony's talked about it. Urban Meyer's talked about it. It's been a week since it's been reported.
I don't think he's got other offers. Yeah.
Yeah, probably a couple of weeks since. He's a 33-year-old man who has not played in the NFL since 2012, I believe, or 2013. Oh, and by the way, he's switching positions. If they are interested, why not just sign him? Oh, by the way, they didn't draft anybody early at tight end. And frankly, if Zach Ertz was traded there, I don't know if he's still playing in the NFL after he was traded there. So, whatever. I don't know. That franchise has made some difficult decisions. And by difficult, I mean difficult to process. The ETN pick when they have James Robinson, who had an incredible rookie year as an undrafted free agent, and then say that they're going to move him around and use him in different spots when they just drafted Laviska Shenault. I know it was a previous regime, but that dude's got tons of upside. Okay, cool, whatever.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Two things that don't go together. Yeah. Wrestling and football. I know they've been trying to do the crossover thing for decades, but you need to keep it separate.
It works at times. Lawrence Taylor, WrestleMania, that worked.
Well,
it works at times.
After the fact, when the player's career is over. And Tony Khan is great at what he does, but this is a mistake that he's going down. He's trying to get Tim Tebow over route. I think that's absolutely wrong. But just a quick Jody Mack prediction for you for 2023. The return of the Shield. For you two non-faction guys, the greatest reunification in the history of wrestling, the return of the Shield in 2023. I'm just saying.
I don't agree with that. Dean Ambrose, Mike used this term. He's a different cat, man. He's not interested. John Moxley, he's a different cat. He
also hasn't really been extremely elevated by being on AEW.
No. That different cat will be back with his Shield brethren in 2023. Remember where you heard it here first. Right. Michael Kaye, a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Michael Kaye, NJ.com here with us on Birds 365. All right. Quickie timeout. We come back. What are we going to do?
No, we don't have to go to the break. We got to wrap it up, Jody.
We're not going to do a break?
No.
We got to put a bow on the show right here, right now.
Put a bow on the show.
All right, fair enough. Good show, good week. Don't forget next week, midweek, Wednesday, the official scheduling day. We will have live coverage all night long here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, and we're giving away not one, not two, 10 Devonta Smith jerseys and tickets to the Eagles home opener. You've got to be with us that night. You're going to be on the YouTube channel. Hit us with your likes, hit us with your shares, hit us with your tweets. Give yourself more chance to win those tickets. That's next Wednesday. But Mac and I will be back on Monday here on Birds 365. Johnny Mac, have a good weekend.
You too, bud.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.